Did anyone have questions about the homework?
Professor,
Yeah.
about the program assignment number 2 about word search. So in order to create this search, do you want us to input like a certain quantity of data, or for example, when you say that it could be a list of names, cities, sport teams, so how many names or names of cities should I add?
It's not critical. You could do an array of length 5 or length 10. One good way to do it, let me go into an example here. Let's see. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, on my Windows got. Is this the one? No. Okay, so here I just decide it's going to be 5 words, and I declare the array of strings length 5. Is there a question?
Yes. So for this example, it's just 5 inputs in the array, right?
Yeah. You can also. I'm looking for my example here. Here we go. In this example, so I use scanner input, and I prompt the user, so enter a number between 1 and 10. It could really be almost any number. Then I accept that input here. So input.nextInt, and I put it into word count. And then I declare the array here. So string, brace, brace, my string. So I'm declaring an array of strings equals new string of word count. So this will essentially create an array of the length that the user specified. Okay, so this makes it a little more dynamic. I would say this is probably the best way to do it with a simple array. Later on in cs210, they use array lists a little more. And with an array list, you don't need to declare the size of the array list up front because we can always add elements to it. But with the simple array, we have to declare that array with a specified size. So this is probably the best way to do it. Just prompt the user to enter a number and put the number into an integer variable, and then create the array of that size.
Okay, got it. I see. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions about the homework assignments? Let me see. Let's see. So last class, I did mention, I think I mentioned it at the end of class, and a few people had dropped off. Did you hear me talk about the extra credit programming assignment?
Yes. To create a video game, right?
Yeah, and I might have a few examples of a video game.
So can you explain
this one may be a
quick
little
what the extra credit assignment is?
Yeah. Let me run this really quick and see if this is a good example. This might be too graphical. Oh yeah, this kind of has a lot of graphics. So really the assignment is to make a video game, program a video game, and then take roughly 5 minutes and present it to the class. This would be on the last week of the quarter before finals week. And really, a large part of the assignment is to do the presentation. So your code could even still have defects. Doesn't need to be perfect. You can just kind of talk through like some design considerations, why you chose to design it how you did, what are some of the challenges you faced, and just walk through the code to the class and kind of present your program to the class. Some people have done really complex games. So like this is one with graphics. And I know we don't really cover graphics this quarter, but like this is a memory game, you know, where you turn the tiles over and try to make a match. My 5-year-old beats me at this game every time. Like I think we already, oh, there we go. So like there's a match. But so that would actually, I would say, be perhaps one of the more complex games. But people have done really simple games like guess a number between 1 and 100, or tic-tac-toe, or like a card game, you know, like blackjack. So you just randomly generate values. It doesn't even need to be with graphics. You can just have a text output and then, you know, total it up to see what the blackjack hand would be if it equals 21 or what. I thought I had a few more examples in here, but they may be somewhere else. But really, the much of the exercise is intended to be the presentation. And it really helps your grade a lot because, like I said, it's a weighted average grade of the exam and the quizzes and the assignment. So if you already have close to 100 on the homework and you do extra credit, then those extra credit points kind of spill over into the other categories like quizzes and the final exam. I think this is not here. Oh, this is not a good example, so I'm not going to do that. Did anyone have questions about the? If you like, I can kind of start talking about one of the next assignments, and you can kind of get a preview of that and kind of get a jump start on it. If no one else has questions, does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. Let me open up Excel. When I so when I worked at Starbucks in IT, we would joke and say it's just coffee. So if a store had problems, we would kind of joke and say, you know, well, the customers can walk across the street, go to the other Starbucks. But this project I'm working on now at work for UW Medicine, we had a systems issue today, or not today, but we're talking about a systems implementation for Go Live coming up in March. Excuse me. And there's a complication around what's going on here? Blood transfusions. And I was like, okay, well, I guess this is not like Starbucks, so I can just say it's just coffee anymore. Okay. So let me go. Okay, so let me run this code and then I'm going to talk about it. And you guys are kind of getting an extra preview of this. This is good. Okay, so I ran this code and it uses multi-arrays and it's producing first rows of all one values. And then it produces a second output of kind of a checkerboard value of zeros and ones. And so this assignment is to use a multi-array, which I'll talk more about, and generate different patterns. And it's actually not so much about a multi-array as it is more about using for loops and nested for loops and if else conditions, because these patterns are generated as we loop through the multi-array. So let me just quickly kind of explain the multi-array here, and then I'll dive into the code. Okay, so we've seen a simple array so far. So a simple array, a single row of cell values, and the address index right, it starts with 0. Whoops. And goes up from there. Okay, so we have here an array, simple array, length 5, and the address locations are 0 through 4, right? Starts at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And in the word search program, you know, these cells may be populated with values. Strings or integers, you know, could be either, right? Okay. Now with multi-arrays, they produce essentially like a grid. And technically, they are arrays of arrays. So instead of an array of simple data values, it's actually an array of arrays. And when we say an array of arrays, the array is right here on the left side going up and down. And that's an array of arrays, and the of arrays part is the horizontal place. The horizontal. The thing to remember is it's still 0 based, and the 0 index starts at the top left corner. So, you know, a lot of typically with XY axes, you know, you start, the lower left corner would be 0, 0, and then you'd go, the X coordinate goes horizontal and the Y coordinate goes vertical. It's not like that. It starts at the upper left corner. For the rows, it counts, as you go up in rows, it counts down. So this is row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4, row 5, row 6, starting at row 0. And same thing with the columns. Column 0, column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4. And let me do this actually. All right, so I'm going to make this multi-array. Oh wait, I didn't write that correctly. Well, I'll keep it the way I had it. Okay, so the coordinates for this, if I'm right here, this is row 2 and column 2. And that's the notation inside the square braces. Okay, this would be row 4, column 3. Right, so that's a multi-array. And the values in the multi-array, you know, similarly could be an integer or a string. So, right, so just like the simple, still have different values throughout. As a side note, I don't see these very often, but just so you know it exists. We can have a jagged. What essentially means is, remember I said it's the multi-array is an array of arrays. Well, the of arrays part, they don't all need to be the same length. So it could be like this. So the green, the shaded green or the shaded keys here would be the array values, the array lengths. So there would be nothing in these blank cells. So the multi-array is not necessarily a perfect rectangle or perfect square. It could be jagged like this, but I really don't see that often because it kind of defeats the purpose of it. These are typically used to make perfect grids. So what in this exercise, what we're doing is we're going through and populating this with like all ones or all zeros or some kind of combination of that. So in this instance, it's like alternating rows. Okay, so you can do different combinations here. And now I'll talk about how we're going to code this. But any questions about this in general before I go on? Okay, you can still hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a multi-array example. And let me go out here to the source section. All right, so the code that I'm walking through now is right here on Canvas. I'm going to publish it right now. Okay, so a couple times myself and others will get disconnected from audio, and if you're not careful, like we'll just keep talking for an hour, and then you learn, oh my God, I've been disconnected like for 45 minutes or an hour. So that's the only reason I verify every once in a while that you guys can still hear me. So this code is out on Canvas. You can download it. Okay, so and I'm giving you guys kind of a head start preview. Don't worry if you feel like you can start on this, you know, great. I'll post it, but I'm going to talk about this more in later classes too. So here we declare our multi-array. And this is what we're calling it, multi-array. This is just what we're naming it. So this word could be anything we like my multi-array, Seattle multi-array, whatever. This is the unique name. We know it's a multi-array because instead of just two braces, there's two pairs of braces. If there's just one pair, simple array, but multi-array, there's two pairs. And then it's private, static, int. It could be private, could be public, just depends how you implement it. But this is really what I want to talk about right here. Okay. So in this program, the different patterns are broken out into separate methods. You don't necessarily need to code it that way, so don't focus too much on that for right now. I just want to talk about the algorithm used to navigate and loop through the multi-array, okay? And it's basically a series of two for loops, one nested inside the other. So here we create a new multi-array of integers, and it's a 10 by 10 array. So 10 rows, 10 columns. And then there's 2 for loops, and one for loop is nested inside the other for loop. And there's really just 2 main differences between these 2 loops. So the biggest difference is, if you notice, the counter variable is different. So the outer for loop here has I, and that's going to be for the rows. You might even want to use R for rows. So for int I equals 0, I is less than multi-array.length, I plus plus. So this for loop is going to go row by row by row, okay? Then there's the inner for loop, and here it's using J for the columns. And so that's going to go column by column by column. Other than that, it's pretty much the same structure. There's one other main difference, though, and that's the middle condition here. So on the outer for loop, it says, for int I equals 0, I is less than multi-array.length, I plus plus. Multi-array.length is the number of rows. So that will return multi-array.length gives us the number of rows. So here it's 7, okay? And that's just saying that, we want to start looping, and we want to loop until we get to the end of until we get to the last row, okay? Then here, the notation's a little different. It's for j equals 0, j is less than multi-array of I dot length j plus plus. So what multi-array of, and notice this is not j, so it's for int j equal to 0, j is less than multi-array of I dot length j plus plus. That's because multi-array of I dot length is saying what's the length of each row. And that actually kind of intuitively makes sense, because remember I said it's an array of arrays. So this is giving us the length of the array part going across. But if it's not really intuitive, you can just remember the syntax. So multi-array dot length gives number of rows. Multi-array of brace dot length gives number of columns. So we have our outer for loop, the inner for loop, and then inside the inner for loop, this is how we get to the coordinate of where we are. So it's simply multi-array of I, J. Have you played like the battleship game where you try to sink your opponent's ships and you call out coordinates like A3, B5, that kind of stuff? So these are coordinates like that. So I, J would be like saying, would be 2, 2 or 4, 3. And what ends up happening here, when we execute this code with these 2, we're starting here where my cursor is, and we're just going down the row. And then we're at the end of, so we start at the first row, we go column by column by column. Now we're in the inner for loop. And when we get here, we've completed the inner for loop, and then we bump back out to the outer loop. But now in the outer loop, I gets incremented by 1. So now I equals 1, not 0. And then we hit the inner for loop and we go column by column. And then we complete the inner for loop, bump back out to the outer for loop. Now I equals 2. And then we go column by column. So this all it's doing is going row by row, column by column, through that multi-array. And then the other key difference here, so right here, I'm populating the array coordinate with the value 1. So for each cell, I'm putting the value 1 into it. Now, the opposite would be to not put anything in the cell, but actually print out what's already in the cell. And in which case it would be like this. Here, we're populating the cell, we're printing the value that's already in the cell. So same format, outer for loop, inner for loop, but now instead of saying, okay, multi-array of ij equals 1, we're simply printing out the value. So system.out.print x of ij. The other call out here, notice that this is not a print line statement, it's a print statement, because when we output this, we don't want a line return after each character. We actually want them to be one after the other, right? But then when we get to the end of the row, we do want a new line. So the print line statement, which includes that ln, which will move us to the next line, this comes after the inner for loop, but still inside the outer for loop. So here, this curly brace right here is the end of the outer loop. But when we're here, we've reached the end of each row. So that's how we end up with each row, and then it jumps to a new line, and so it kind of outputs a grid. So the assignment asks for different patterns, and the different patterns are essentially make them all ones, make them checkerboard, alternating zeros and ones. The other patterns call for like alternating rows, like this. And how you produce those patterns is really just using for loops and if conditions inside these nested for loops. So let me show you, where is this? Somewhere I use modulus. Where did it go? Maybe this is a different implementation of it. Is it modulus? Okay, well, a good way to determine, so one way to do this, have you used a modulus operator, like the percent sign? 12 modulus 4 equals 0. The modulus essentially gives you the remainder. So 12 divided by 4 is 3. There's no remainder. The modulus is 0. So you know you're on an even row. If there's a remainder of 1, or then you know it's an odd row. So what you can do is inside your for loop, so here where we set the value to 1, you can do a modulus operation on I, which is the row number. And depending on if that modulus value is 1 or 0, you can decide, okay, either populate it with a 1 or populate it with a 0. And that will give you alternating row pattern. This other, and there's a million different ways to code this. There's no one right way. But another solution here, if I can find it. Yeah, so this is to make a checkerboard pattern, like an alternating pattern like this one here. And so what they actually do is, rather than increment by 1 on each loop, like I++ or J++, they actually increment by 2. So as they loop through, they say on the outer loop, I equals I plus 2. On the inner loop, J equals J plus 2. And then they populate 2 rows at a time. So this is row I, and they populate I of J and I of J plus 1 and make it 0 and 1. And then beneath that, on the next row, which is I plus 1, they populate I plus 1 J and I plus 1 J plus 1 and make it 1 and 0. So what ends up happening is they're populating 2 rows at a time. So they're saying 1 0 0 1 1 0 0 1. And when you get to the end of the row, you end up with this checkerboard pattern. So, but the reason I'm walking through this is because honestly, these 2 nested for loops really give you like 80% of the code, because after that, it's just minor tweaks to do the different patterns. And this code is posted to Canvas, so you're not starting from scratch. So you'll have the first few patterns and you can kind of modify them to make the others. Okay, so any questions about that?
No.
Okay, so this is not due next week or anything, but I'll go ahead and publish this assignment after this call. So if any of you are just raring to go further, you can get started on it. But really, this code is intended to kind of give you a little more than even a good start. Like it's those nested for loops is really the backbone of what you need to program that code. When my class met in person in class, sometimes I would just do like an open lab session and people would work on homework. I would just kind of walk around and help. And that usually worked pretty well, but it's just more difficult to do over Zoom kind of. Well, it is more difficult to do. Okay, I don't want to go any further ahead than that because it would just muddy the waters here. And I know we have that code from last class. I'm still going to work at debugging that, find out what's going on with that. Okay, any other questions on the code?
That's good for me.
Okay, well, I'll let you guys go then. Just remember there is a quiz this week. Well, I take that back. Where was is there a quiz? There's a quiz for chapter 3. But there's these are actually pretty good articles. This guy, this McRaven guy, was like I think he's a retired Navy SEAL and commander of the Navy, but this is a really awesome, famous speech that he gave at University of Texas. And he wrote a book. His book is called like Make Your Bed. But really cool guy. It's a really cool speech. This video is actually kind of cheesy, but the guy makes some really good points. So I highly recommend it. I have to admit though, it's kind of cheesy. There's parts of it, but it's a good video. So, okay, and then so yeah, for next week, chapter 4. there's a lot of other topics that I sometimes go into through the quarter that I think are really useful, but the thing is that it's not the core curriculum, so it's not stuff that will be on the final exam. And I've been told to kind of hone in more on the final exam. So I don't know. I haven't decided. I may some of that as extra credit or something, or we'll just do like an in-class exercise. One final note too before I let you go. It's sounding like, remember the final exam is a common final exam. So all the different sections will take exactly the same test. And each instructor contributes a few different questions and we pull them together. So I don't know if I agree with it, but it's sounding like they're going to require the lockdown browser for that exam. So to give you practice using that, I'll probably have one of the quizzes use the lockdown browser. For the quizzes, it will be more irrelevant. It's more just to give you practice with it. But has anyone here used that in other classes so far?
Yeah. I use Honor like for biology class.
Okay. So, and you know what it is? It like limits your ability to open up other browser windows. A lot of the instructors like it because it doesn't let you copy and paste in the windows. I'm just a little skeptical of it because there's still nothing keeping you from Googling stuff on your phone or on a second laptop sitting nearby. So I don't know, but I'm just giving you a heads up. It's looking like they're going to require that for the final exam. Okay, but that's all I have for today. So I know I owe a few people questions over email, so I'll have more time for that the rest of this week. And if you have any other questions, just feel free to email me too.
Thank you.
All right, have a good night and a good weekend.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, you too.